Good morning, everyone. Sorry, apologies for that, for the technical issues there. Thank you for waiting and welcome to the Driving Productivity Using Drones in the Housing Sector webinar, co-hosted by Connected Places Catapult and Disrupted Innovators Network. My name is Howard Chow and I'm a system engineer here at the Connected Places Catapult. I've spent the last 8 months working on drones-related projects and engaging with industries to identify key sector drivers and opportunities for uptake of drones. Although drones were initially associated with military or recreational use, they are increasingly being used in various sectors thanks to their ability to capture rich aerial data, as well as increasing safety and cost efficiency. As an example, drone technologies can currently help support housing providers in building condition surveys and stakeholder engagement. And this webinar today is to aim to help organizations such as housing associations, ALMOs, local authorities, and any other organizations that are looking into new methods of working towards a preventative maintenance, and in particular, how they could implement drones into their existing workflow. We have a series of speakers lined up today with on-screen polls and a live demo to make the session as engaging as possible. The webinar is recorded. If you miss anything, don't worry. We'll be sharing the recordings as a YouTube link on the event page for you to catch up or share with others that might find this webinar useful. So to kick off, I will take you through the agenda for this webinar. So following my introductions, we will first hear from our guest speakers from the National Housing Federation. Then we will hear from Hannah Chu from Connected Places Catapult. She'll be providing an overview of the government Drone Pathfinder Catalyst program and setting the context for the drone inspection trials with Yorkshire Housing and Vantage UAV. And following the presentation, we'll hear from Darren Williams from Yorkshire Housing. Darren will be providing Yorkshire's perspectives, specifically on the challenges and opportunities for housing associations. And after that, we'll hear from Richard Scriven from Vantage UAV. And Richard will be presenting about the building inspection trial and showing us the drone data solution in a demo. Then we will hear from Graham Brown from RPAS UK, and he'll be covering the different uses of drones in housing. Our co-host partner, Jenny Danson from Disruptive Innovators Network, will be talking through the joined the CPC DINLab program, which is aiming to support the housing sector to implement drones into their business. And Jenny will be then invite our speakers to a fireside chat to address some of the key concerns for drone adoptions within the sector. And at the end of the webinar, we will be running a live Q&A. We have enabled the Q&A feature for the whole sessions so that if you have any questions you would like to ask the presenters, please submit them and state who you wish the questions to go to. And you can do so by clicking on the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen next to the chat icon at any time during the webinar. If we do get a lot of questions coming through the first half of the webinar, then we will hold a short Q&A just after the demo from Vantage UAV. So that's it from me. Without further ado, it's a great pleasure for me to introduce our guest speaker today, Victoria Moffat, who is the head of Building Safety and Fire Program at the National Housing Federation. Victoria leads the National Housing Federation's building safety work, which focuses on supporting housing associations in their work to remediate buildings, shaping and preparing for new regulatory systems, and developing long-term cultural change around safety. Victoria comes from a communications, policy and public affairs background with experience in both housing and the charities sector. So if you like, Victoria, I'll hand over to you now. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Howie. It's my job just to welcome you to this webinar, and I know that those of you on the webinar from the housing sector will be thinking more than ever about the safety of your buildings. And of course, that's both in terms of ensuring resident safety following the tragic fire at Grenfell Tower, but you'll also be thinking about the long-term future as the sector adopts new safety regulations following Dame Judith Hackett's independent review into building regulations and fire safety, and the upcoming commencement of the Fire Safety Act. As social landlords, on top of meeting your responsibilities around safety, you'll also be having to consider how you maximise the life cycle of your buildings so that they continue to meet decent home standards and approved energy efficiency targets. Predominantly, this is vital to ensuring housing associations continue to offer high quality, safe homes to people who need them most. But you'll also be thinking about the viability of your buildings, both to make best use of public money already invested in the country's housing stock, but also to ensure as much affordable housing as possible is available long into the future. So I know that you'll be looking into innovative ways to manage your buildings as you continue to pursue your goals around safety, performance, and quality, while being mindful of value for money and, importantly, of minimizing any disruption to the lives of residents living in buildings that may need vital remediation work to address building safety concerns or other works to improve their homes. Today's webinar will therefore hopefully be of great use to you, focusing on the use of drones as one way to reduce the costs and timescales of inspecting and surveying buildings to ascertain their condition. I'm really looking forward to joining you and hearing more about the Drone Pathfinder Catalyst programme and the work being done to adopt drones and maximise their potential in the housing sector. So without further ado, I'll pass you back to Howie to begin the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that speech, Victoria. Yeah, it's very topical at the moment, especially around building safety. Actually, we had the incident again yesterday in London around Eltham Castle. So I think it would be very good to hear more about this discussion later in the fireside chat on how we can shape the sector using drones and technologies. So now I'll hand over to Hannah, who's the Director of Air Mobility at Connected Places Catapult.
Thank you, Howie. And welcome everybody to our update presentation on uptake of drones into the housing sector. So next slide, please, Howie. First of all, before I set the context of the CPC's role, I wanted to just set the context of the Catapult network as a whole. Many of the people that we work with are familiar with the government's initiative, the Catapult network. However, I know today we're reaching out to a more diverse audience, so I wanted to just highlight some of the great things that go on within the wider network, and then zoom in onto what CPC are bringing to the Pathfinder. So the Catapult network is a network of 9 innovation centres. As you can see, they are distributed around the country. And each centre specialises in a different area of technology. So a lot of my career history has been spent in the high value manufacturing catapult, for example, where we were underpinning manufacturing in the UK. Now, the Catapult network was set up to address a gap within the UK's innovation space. So we have our universities that work with our very early technology readiness levels, TRLs. And they are, looking at the Petri dish. They're writing PhDs and really looking at the disruptive science that can bring change even decades later. And then on the other side of the coin, we have our industries who are already at a very high technology readiness level. They're already selling and using products. And then in the middle, we have what we call the Valley of Death. And the Valley of Death is where good ideas go to die if they're not sponsored and appropriately funded and nurtured. So what the Catapult network does is it bridges the Valley of Death, and it enables industry, manufacturers, end users, OEMs, tier ones to say, these are our challenges, and look back into the innovation space to pull those ideas. And it allows universities to look out and say, we have these solutions, and look how these solutions can support what you're doing. So the Catapult network acts as this convener of the great minds on either side of the coin. So we are independent. We're a not-for-profit organisation. The whole Catapult network is such, and we are looking to anchor value in the UK, in UK PLC, for the growth of prosperity for the whole of the United Kingdom. So we do that by offering an impartial innovation as a service offer to public bodies, businesses and infrastructure providers in order to catalyse step change improvements in the way people work, live and travel. Connected Places Catapult, the focus area for us is the urban planning, city designs and all aspects of transport and mobility. So Harry, next slide please. Thank you. Within the Pathfinder Catalyst programme, over recent years, the Drone Pathfinder has been bringing together organisations working towards regulation to an order uptake of drones. This Catalyst programme is using the current state of the art, sponsored by the Department for Transport and supported by the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. And we're working very closely with the Civil Aviation Authority. Together, we're looking to increase and accelerate the safe adoption of drones across UK business sectors by looking at the current state of the art and seeing what can be done to integrate drones with their technology today. A lot of effort is going into looking at how drones can be used tomorrow in a beyond visual line of sight capacity. However, we do not yet have regulations that enable day-to-day operations in beyond visual line of sight. So what can we do whilst we look forward to beyond visual line of sight as the status quo in the future, using drones within the regulatory framework we have today? So what we've done in this activity is engaged with the industry sector and spoken with the regional authorities to develop use cases. So this activity that we're presenting to you today is the first of several that you will see over the coming months in this financial year. So we'll be taking all the lessons learned from this activity, and that will be supporting us driving into further sectors. We also want to understand what the key sector drivers and opportunities are for the uptake of drones and areas of growth. We want to demonstrate the use cases to increase awareness and build support in order to evidence the benefits of drones. And we want to convene industry bodies, drone service providers, regulators to collaborate on the best practice for safe implementation. So I'm hoping that one of our audience members who reached out to me yesterday on LinkedIn, for example, and put their hand up and said, oh, we've been doing this with our local authority for some time. So please come along and join the conversation. We want to drive widespread industry take-up of drone services because the benefits are there and they're clear to be seen. So what are the barriers to implementation, and how can we work with all of you to remove those barriers and help save those precious pounds for the taxpayer? So Howie, on that note, I'm going to hand back to you and look forward to our presenters today and to the discussion. Please do get involved in the chat. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Anna. On that note, I will play a short video, which probably will help to set the context for the remainder of the event. And this short video is taken from a trial that we have done with Yorkshire Housing and Vantage UAV, in particular for building inspections that we did.
Connected Places Catapult is the UK's innovation accelerator for cities, transport and places. As part of the DFT-funded Drone Pathfinder Catalyst programme, we're here today with Yorkshire Housing and Vantage UAV to demonstrate the benefits of using drones to inspect buildings and property. The inspection, maintenance and repair of buildings and property is a major cost for organisations, especially housing associations.
So a typical building like this one, to get up to the different levels of roof that we have on the building, we would need scaffolding, we'd need maybe a cherry picker, we'd obviously have our staff, our surveyors working at height as well, which obviously introduce costs and danger. And of course this building is occupied, we have residents in there, so it's quite intrusive.
This is where drones come in, as they allow you to capture high quality imaging and data without the need for unsafe manual inspection at height.
We're looking at whether or not we have leaks in the roof, there are cracked tiles or more causant factors. We also are taking videos, and we will merge all of this together to allow us to create two-dimensional and a three-dimensional image of the building, and that output will allow Yorkshire Housing to have complete digitalised representation of their asset.
It's something we've been wanting to do, but really didn't have the partners in place to enable us to do that. But from what I've seen so far, we can get much closer, a lot of detail of the property. And from a Yorkshire Housing point of view, that means we can plan more effectively for how we repair and maintain our buildings in the future.
Vantage UAV are one of the many drone service providers on the market today, and the market's expected to grow significantly over the next few years. To find out more about how the Connected Places Catapult is helping unlock the benefits of drone services, please get in touch.
Thank you very much for showing that video. So before we get cracking with our wonderful speakers today, I wanted to do the first poll of the day. So we are going to get you thinking and interacting with us today, so that we're not all just sitting down watching the screen, which many of us spend our days doing. So Howie is in the driving seat for the polls. I've got 3 questions that we would like you to answer. The first is about the sector that you're working in. The second is about your actual role yourself, and then the third is zooming back out to your organisation. So question 1, which sector do you currently work in? So we're just going to give you 5 seconds to click the button in front of you, please. And then our second question is about your personal role. So do you currently manage and maintain housing and building stocks as your job, not something that someone else in your organisation does, but that you do in your role? And then finally, if your organisation owns housing or building stocks, are you currently using drones to support your maintenance activities? So if you could press submit when you're done, and I believe that once we have everybody in, we will get an on-the-spot response, so we'll be able to understand the audience we have today and possibly tailor some of those things. Here we go. Well, that's a great split, isn't it? So housing providers, 36%, that's over a third of our audience are the target take-up market. And then another third of the audience are the people that could be providing the solutions. So I'm delighted to see that. Also delighted that some of the people responsible for making the decisions around managing and maintaining are here, and a large portion of you are not. So hopefully we have some of the decision makers here too. And I think that really interesting here in this final question is that we do have a number of people that are currently undertaking drone activities, and that we have again a third of the population there of our audience have never used drones. So I think some huge opportunities for good discussion and for potentially future networking from the poll there. Howie, if I could hand back to you to lead us into the technical presentations.
Thank you, Hannah. Let's see if I could go to the next slide. So up next we have Darren Williams, who's the lead innovator from Yorkshire Housing. Over to you, Darren.
Thanks, Howie. So hello everyone. Yorkshire Housing is a social housing provider, and we own and manage around 18,000 properties across Yorkshire. Our business vision is to offer our customers a place they can be proud to call home, and we aim to achieve this through our priorities, which are to offer a great customer experience, to let and build homes and places to be proud of, and to grow. Our 2 remaining priorities will enable us to achieve this, and that's to be an employer of choice and to develop a strong, resilient and innovative business. So where are we involved with today's topic? We were approached by the Connected Places Catapult at the end of April and offered the opportunity to take place in this drone demonstration that we're talking about today. We were asked to come up with some use cases for drone use within the social housing sector. Now I jumped at the chance to work on this so we could learn more about how drone technology can be used within the social housing sector. And from a purely personal perspective, I just think drones are really, really cool. We drew up a list of use cases, but we focused immediately on a couple of specific use cases that would be valuable to the business right now. And those were inspections of high level and difficult to access areas and roofs, and thermal inspections of our properties to understand things like energy usage and heat loss. After liaising with CPC and ARPAS, we understood that thermal inspections work better at night or in the cold months where the temperature is more, has got a greater difference between the inside and the outside. So we ruled that out, deciding that the middle of June would probably not give us the best results. And we focused instead on the inspections of some of our difficult to access locations. So why did we choose this and what were our challenges? So as a business, one of our first priorities is always the safety of our colleagues. We contract out all of our roofing works, and wherever possible, we avoid sending people on the roofs. Now, this can make it a bit difficult to access a roof to be able to do an inspection. So we're normally doing these from the ground using binoculars or cameras, or by viewing the roof within the building from the underside, but it's not always possible to access this. So you don't always get the full picture, and we may have to make a judgment on repairs based on balance of probabilities. Another concern is cost and time. Scaffolding's not cheap, hiring cherry pickers is expensive, and there's a lead time to get both of these in place. As I mentioned, we don't send our people onto the roofs wherever possible. All our roofing works are contracted out. So we get the survey done normally as part of the repair work. We've got great contractors, but this to me feels a little bit like marking your own homework. So if we could get a better view of the roof before any work starts, we can better understand the extent of the works that are needed and feed this into a more long-term strategic planning plan. And last but by no means least, there is the disruption to our residents. To ensure we're delivering our priorities of a great customer experience and a home to be proud of, we want to minimise the disruption to our residents as much as possible. So these are our general challenges, and with those in mind, we've selected 3 sites for the drone demonstration with 2 real objectives for Yorkshire Housing, and those are to learn what drones can do for us and to get some real world data at locations where we think roofing works might be needed at the moment. We selected a mix of 3 different property types for the demonstration to learn the most that we could, and we didn't make it easy. One of the locations in particular that you will have seen on the short video earlier was a converted church with a complex roof, a spire that is occupied by leaseholders. We asked for high resolution images and 3D renders of the buildings, which you should see shortly. And we had previously had a ground-based survey done for the church, which suggested extensive roof replacement works costing well over £250,000. The leaseholders who resided at the church asked us to get a second opinion, so it was very, very timely that this demonstration came along when it did. So what did we learn? So the first thing that we learned was that it's fast, really fast. We had all 3 locations surveyed in under 3.5 days. The one took 1.5 days to survey was the church, which we knew was going to be a complex building and would take a bit longer than the others. Vantage UAV had monitors on site, so they were live streaming the footage from the drone so that our Yorkshire Housing colleagues could actually see that footage on the fly as it was happening. We got excellent results. We received high resolution images and 3D models. For the church site, we're still analysing the results. However, early indications are we won't need the extensive works that was first thought, and we could make significant savings on there. We also found that there was a high resident acceptance factor. We initially thought residents might not be accepting of drone technology due to privacy concerns. So we wrote to all the residents about a week in advance to tell them what we intended to do. And we gave them my mobile number to contact if they had any questions or concerns. I didn't receive a single call or text message from anybody. On the day of the surveys, a number of residents spoke to Vantage about the works they were doing, but again, nobody raised concerns. They were just interested in what was going on. For the church site, the outputs from this demonstration give us the data that we need to properly engage with the leaseholders to show what works are needed with evidence to back that up if we need that. Also, our surveyors were impressed, and not just our surveyors, but other Yorkshire Housing colleagues as well. This is important to us as in order to get this technology fully embedded in the business, it's not just winning over the customers, it's making sure that our colleagues are happy with it as well. So we got surveyors out on site. It was great to get them there, talking with Vantage UAV, asking questions, learning more about how the technology can be used within their areas of the business and how it can make their jobs easier, more effective and quicker in the future. So I'm just going to show a little bit of feedback from the business on that note. So Steve, one of our void surveyors, said, I found the drone demonstration very useful as I had a void at Roundwood which had a leak coming through the kitchen. From the drone footage, it showed the roof felt was in good order and it looked like the issues were from the internal guttering. A job was raised and the contractor resolved the issue swiftly. Now, Roundwood is a number of low-rise blocks that have all got flat roofs. We knew that there was a leak, but from the live streamed footage on site, Steve identified the root cause of the problem, arranged for the targeted repair works to be done, and it was completed within a week or so of that flight taking place. The second quote I've got for is from Andy Gamble, our Executive Director of Growth and Assets, and you'd have seen him on the video just now. So Andy said, without the drone, we would not have been able to inspect some of the hard to reach parts of this building without expensive scaffolding or Spider-Man on hand. This also minimised the disruption to our customers. I'm looking forward to seeing the final results. And so at that point, I'd like to hand over to Richard from Vantage to show us some of the results.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Richard Scriven. I'm the co-founder, managing director of Vantage UAV. It's been a pleasure working with our friends here at Connected Places Catapult and Yorkshire Housing, and it was a privilege to be selected to undertake this survey on their behalf. Just trying to get my screen to slip there. Possibly could somebody move my slides for me? Thank you. Vantage UAV are a drone solutions and services company. Our objectives, as Darren has just outlaid to you there, was firstly to inspect the 3 properties within this project, provide an insight to the deliverables and outputs that you can get from drones, actually look at some of that data and see what you can see within that data and how that can benefit you. Within this presentation, we'll be talking about a number of use case examples and then summarize at the end there. So there were 3 properties that we were looking at here within this project. The first one, as referenced by Darren, was a typical traditional flat roof complex in Huddersfield. The next was a lovely old church that's been converted into residential properties up in Harrogate. And the final one, a more, again, traditional sloped roof complex in Dewsbury. So the deliverables that we were looking at first and foremost, first one was from an asset management perspective. What can we actually see utilising inspections from drones? We were looking at the facades and the rooftops to give us an overall picture of the external integrity of each of the buildings. We were then asked, using a combination of high resolution videos and photographs, to mesh all of this information together to create both 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional automosaics, which you'll see shortly. And then finally, how this can all be put together and used from a management information perspective. A terminology called BIM, which most of you are familiar with, and depending on who you talk to, can mean a whole myriad of different things. So we'll talk to you about what we see BIM meaning in the context of the built environment. Okay. So in terms of inspection insight, before I go into a couple of the presentations, just to talk to you very briefly about what happens before you go to site and the on-site challenges that you might have to take into account. So first and foremost, we'll do a pre-site check, typically online, prior to going to the actual site itself. This may take half an hour to a couple of hours, depending upon the building, its location and what's surrounding it. We'll be looking at the transport links, the roads that are nearby, where we have safe places to take off and land, the location of buildings nearby, whether they impact upon what we need to do, vegetation, all those sorts of things. We'll also check airspace, and on the day we'll check something called NOTAMs, which are notice to airmen, just in case there's something in particular happening within the airspace on the day that we're due to undertake the flights, and therefore we need to postpone or wait until that has passed. We will also notify local authorities and the local constabulary, just in case a member of the public has concern that there are drones in the air, and their fears can be eased. We'll need permissions from the local landowner to be able to take off. And finally, as again Darren mentioned, we'll send advisories to all members of the particular residence so they know that we will be on site. Okay, so inspection findings then. There are a number of ways that clients, sorry, I need to share my screen. Could somebody allow me to share my screen, please? There are a number of ways that, my apologies, I need to share my screen to show you these. Okay, we need to be able to show my screen here. Can people see that?
Hi, Richard. No, I think it's just your webcam.
Yeah, we're just seeing your camera view at the minute, Rich.
Okay. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Thank you very much. Okay, so hopefully you can see that now. Apologies. It is live after all. Okay, so there are a number of ways that our clients are interested in how they receive their data. Some clients like their data in its raw format. Now, depending upon the type of asset that we are inspecting, that can be anything from a couple of gigabytes through to the church you're about to see was about 70 gigabytes. So that data typically would be provided directly to the client in an encrypted format. And because of the size of that data still, even with technologies it is today, that would usually be given to them through a USB dongle or an SSD card. Other clients who have their own capabilities in-house, we can transfer that data directly to them. But in most circumstances, what we find is our clients are wanting to use some sort of asset management portal. Now, there are various portals available that you can use. We typically use the one that's on the screen at this moment in time, but we do use others dependent upon what our client requires. But they have a similar format to them all. What you would tend to have on a dashboard of this nature is a map of the location of the particular asset, and below that you will have the actual assets in question. So if we were to click onto the one, for example, what will happen is you will see a whole myriad of different images come up, and there are hundreds and hundreds of images, and a more detailed map of the particular location of those assets. If you click further in, what you will then see is a selection of points from where around that particular inspection the images were taken. And below, again, you will see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of images. Now, what we need to do here is to actually filter through those images to be able to show the client exactly what the findings are, where they were found, and so they can determine what they need to do about it. So in the eyes or the words of somebody who used to be on television, here's one we prepared earlier. So hopefully this will work. Okay, so what we will do, we'll just take a couple of examples here. For example, if we look at this image here, what you will see is it will come up on the screen in the sort of format it was taken, and you'll see there's an annotation here. Now at this point you might think, well, I can't really see very much here, and this is where the beauty of the high definition of the sensors that the drones use come into play. So what you can do, and you'll see it render, is you can start to actually zoom in to the point at where we can see there's a broken tile. Now on this image, that looks relatively innocuous. It's a tiny little crack in a tile. However, because of the level of specificity you can see, there's a hole at the back of that crack. Now, one of the issues with this particular building is water ingress, and we know that water always finds a way. So this is an area that this type of technology can highlight that potentially would have been very difficult to spot under using traditional methods. Okay, if I then click on the annotation itself, you can see here that you can get a category of severities, one being it's worth a point of interest, maybe nothing's going to happen for 6 to 12 months, maybe review it next time, all the way through to 5, which is quite serious, you need to sort it out straight away. How you categorize that is very much determined by yourself. I put it as a 3, but actually if there's water ingress, I could probably move that to a 5. You can also then look down here and you can add comments to this. And these portals have tiered access to them. So from a controlled security perspective, the senior individuals within a business can determine who can access this portal and at what tier. So some people may be able to add information, others may only be able to view it, but other people may just need to be able to print off a report, hand it to the maintenance team so they can go out and actually undertake the works on your behalf. I'll just quickly show another example. Let's have a look. Let's have a look at is it this one here. And if we scroll down, no, it's not this one. Let's just have a look at another one. So right, the screen is over. I think it might be this one here. Okay, so on this, there are a couple of annotations. Again, you can scroll in to see the level of detail that you're getting as it renders. The first part of this is just algae or moss growing on the roof. Then if we come over here, we can see a second annotation. And these look like some sort of outlets or extractor outlets that typically have a casing on them. But here we can see that 2 are missing. So again, quickly looking at the drone, you can see that these need to be replaced or repaired. Again, I don't know what's underneath those, but with holes there, potentially water can get in. So this could be an issue. Also then, if you want to share this data with your colleagues out in the field, you can very quickly generate a report. It automatically produces. This is just render quickly. Then you can scroll down. What this will give you is an overview of the location of the building. It can tell you there are, 15 severities there of different levels, 9 points of interest. Again, you can scroll down. It will categorize each of those, tell you on which page of the report they are, tell you what the issues are. And again, there's a reference there linking back to the actual data portal itself, should you wish to see it in more detail. You can further scroll down. Each one of those images you will see in order. And again, the area of annotation you can see in further detail, and it allows you to make a decision as to whether or not you wish to do something about it. So that was a very quick couple of images. I'll just show you a couple more. We have here the church. Again, wonderful building, lots and lots and lots of images. You can see here we spent or took 390 odd images just for this purpose. Again, we can use this tool. We can add some filters there to reduce that number further. And what this will allow you to do, again, as I say, is focusing on where the issues are. And so then if we scroll up, we'll pick on a couple of these images here. Looks like we have a category 5. You can see the annotation. We can scroll in. You can see the detail that you can get from these images. And we could see straight away, well, somebody's been throwing rocks in this particular area and we need to replace that skylight. We can also have a look around and see if there are any other points of interest. If we click on this one here, Again, we see an annotation. If we can scroll in, we have a very nice tree. Unfortunately, it's in the wrong place, and therefore that shows us that we have vegetation ingress. Also, if you're scrolling around, again, you can see the level of detail you can get. Here, you can see, in general, the state of this roof is not too bad. We probably need a bit of pointing doing, and there are one or two cracked tiles which need replacing, but by no means do we need to replace this entire roof. And again, with that in mind, we have another image here, I believe. One of the concerns of this building was the cost of replacement of the roof. A very difficult area to reach was this flat area between the main body of the church and the tower. And we can scroll in again, high definition, and see, well, actually, that's very good. We don't actually need to spend any time or money on replacing that. So as you can see, this type of technology can be used in the comfort of your home, save time and effort for people to be going on site, save money for having to erect the scaffolding and so on and so forth. And obviously it's very safe, and the data is consistent, and it allows you to view these things and allows to make decisions from the comfort of your own home. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and I'm going to pass over to my colleague John, and we'll give you some other details of how we can produce other benefits. So John, if you would. Okay, super, thank you. So what we have here is what we call a 3D orthomosaic of one of the sites. As you can see, it's the flat roofed site at Roundwood. These are beautiful pictures, obviously amazing to look at, but there are actually some benefits in here as well, you would think. First and foremost, if you have a number of issues that you've identified through the inspection process, it gives you a great overall generic orientation of the site. So from a planning perspective, what you can see is where all those defects are in relation to one another. Do you need to scaffold the entire building, or can you save money and only scaffold part of it? Or can you access things with cherry pickers and so on and so forth? So the whole overall maintenance program, it brings into perspective for you. Secondly, one of the things we found, and this will probably resonate with a number of you, is that a lot of housing associations, asset managers in this space don't have many CAD drawings or as-built drawings. So when it comes to the measurements and exact dimensions of a lot of their properties, they don't actually know what they are. So for example, we might want to have a look at this window here and determine, okay, we need to replace this window, but how big is it? So with a couple of clicks, what you can see there is that this window is 1.78 meters across in terms of width, which is fantastic if you need to replace the windows. Likewise, a lot of money is expended on materials. So from a quant's perspective, it gives you a level of accuracy as to how many much materials you need to procure, or conversely, actually you don't need to pay for. So for example, here on this carport roof, with a few clicks, we can determine that if we were to replace that, we need about 39 square meters of felt. So if you imagine plus 10% for your offcuts and things like that, that's exactly how much felt you need to replace the roof. Now, if you multiply that up by panels on the side of a high rise, or bricks and so on and so forth, you can see that your ability to increase the accuracy from that perspective is significant. And then if perhaps we actually move to the church, John, please. Now here we have an orthomosaic of the church. This was an incredible number of pieces of data to create this. But again, we may want to have a look at measurement of heights of things like that. So with this sort of technology, perhaps, John, if we can go to the tower, if we wanted to determine the height of that tower, with 2 simple clicks, we can actually say, okay, well, this tower is just under 42 meters in height. Now, that's all well and good on a building of this nature, but if we relate the fact that many of our clients have high-rise buildings, one of their big issues is the magic 18-meter line for cladding purposes and for horizontal fire breaks. It may be that we need to determine exactly where that is, because again, because of no CADs and as-builts, very often it isn't known. And we can see by this very quickly, we can determine exactly where that line is for the 18-meter mark. Okay. Right, so I mean, from an image perspective, we're very tight on time today, so that's it. I'm sure there'll be quite a few questions, but thank you, John, and we'll return back to the screen. Thank you, and if we can return back to the presentation.
Thanks, Richard, for that.
Yeah, I just wanted to cover off a couple of other points there. In terms of timescales, Darren mentioned that, but typically from being asked to undertake a project, undertaking the pre-planning, the actual inspection of the building itself and the output, depending upon the building itself, anything from a couple of days through to 8 to 10 working days. So if you compare that versus a large tower block, perhaps, where you need to get permissions for scaffolding, procure that scaffolding, erect it, then have people working at heights and inspecting that, which can be several months, you can see how the utilization of drone technology can compress those timescales for you. And finally, then we come on to BIM, Business Intelligence Management, Business Information Management. It means many things to many people, but really what this allows you to do is bring together all of the information that you have on all of your assets, all into one accessible, easily usable portal or system. I've actually put the name here of a company called Dio. They have a solution called Twindit. I'm not one for shouting out about these things, but this has been designed specifically with the golden thread in mind, and is a solution that I would recommend everybody have a look at. The drone captures the data from the outside. You get absolutely accurate 3D models of the exterior of your building. You also then utilize internal sensors, which can give you again an accurate insight into the inside of your building. From this, again, CAD drawings, as-built, can be produced. You can create other orthomosaics, but also it allows you to collate all that other information that you have on each of these buildings, from safety information, your fire hydrants. You can walk around the building in 3D and see a fire hydrant, for example. You can see who inspected that, when it was inspected, and when it needs to be inspected again. And because of this sort of level of detail, it also infers that responsibility and accountability, which is so important within the building safety of a building. So yes, and the other thing about this is accessibility. With these type of platforms, you can have them on your laptop, you can have them on your desktop, but you can also have access to them from a tablet or even your mobile phone. So if you're out on site and you need to understand what's going on with your building, you can do it there and then. But even further than that, and this is why I think this particular system is phenomenal, is that the emergency services also have access to this information. So for example, God forbid, we had another situation like Grenfell. If you think a firefighter is in the back of his fire engine en route to a fire, and he has a tablet, and you have a complete digitalization of your asset portfolio, and they have access to that, by the time they get to said emergency, they know where the exits and the entrances are, those fire hydrants are, and so on and so forth. So it may save 10 minutes, it may only save 2 minutes, but 2 minutes may save lives. So this type of technology is really, really important. Next slide, please. And here, just to give you a few different outputs that you can get using BIM. Oops. Sorry, just finally to summarize, I'll just go back there. In summary, therefore, and sorry, real life technology and all, it always makes it fun. Getting and capturing data utilizing drones is a far more accurate and efficient way of doing things. It gives you much greater insight into the integrity of all of your assets. The data is collected much faster and in a much safer environment than more traditional methods, because it reduces the time that people need to be working at heights. It allows you to look at your planning and scheduling and use of human resources. So rather than spending time collecting that data, they can be more effectively focused on the outputs and what they need to be doing to actually resolve the issues. And the most, well, it's not the most, but one of the significant points here is the reduction in cost. We haven't really talked about that, but typically the cost reduction of utilizing drone services is in somewhere between 70 to 80% plus of the cost of traditional methods. And so just I'll leave you with a final thought. If you think that the typical mid-rise building around the UK, of which there are tens, if not hundreds of thousands of those across many associations, costs in the region of about £20,000 to inspect. Now, if you're saving £15,000, £16,000 per building, you have 10 buildings, that's £160,000. If you have 1,000 buildings, that's £16 million. Now, at the moment, with the output of the Building Safety Bill, we all know, we see it every day, and it's been made reference to today, that there is no money available, be it government, be it local residencies, be it associations, to actually meet some of these challenges from a cost perspective. Now, with inspections, this is money that is already allocated. So if you can save a significant chunk of that money in order to by adopting, I beg your pardon, drone technologies, it's not going to solve the problem, but it would definitely go a long way to helping you resolve it. I'll leave you with that thought, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Richard. And thanks, Darren, for the presentation before. And I can see it seems I have quite a few questions that has come through in the first half of the sessions, and I would like to really just hold off the next presentations and spend the next 5 to 10 minutes to have a quick Q&A before our 1 hour mark, if that's okay with everyone, because we are getting very good questions in. So if I could just ask Richard and Darren to pop the cameras back on, and I will direct some of these questions to you. That's okay.
Okay.
Brilliant. Okay, so first questions is from Jim Bishops, and that's directed to Darren. Does the client find the software beneficial when uploading large quantities of housing stock?
That's a great question. We've only recently got access to the app, and it's been specifically at this point for this footage from the drone, but I can see the benefit of this sort of technology going forward for stock condition surveys, for instance, and working with other contractors and partners to do these kind of inspections. So yeah, we're not using it at the moment, but definitely want to explore.
Thank you. Next one is from Brian Simpson, and this one I believe is direct to you, Darren. So what is the software? They use ProMaster, and is there a summary report produced, or do the clients filter through the information? Actually, that one probably might be best for Vantage, since it's specific to the system being used.
Okay, sorry, could you ask that question again, Howie?
So this is in comparison to a ProMaster software. So is there a summary report produced for the software being used for the trial, and can the clients filter through the information?
Yes, yes. I mean, the software made reference to, I'm not actually familiar with. I'm sure some of my team are. But as you saw in the presentation there, and with most of the portals, they have similar capabilities. There is the capability there to select a report. And again, what you want on that report is determined by what you select, and that can be produced and provided to whomever needs it. So I think that's answering that question.
Thank you. Another question for you, Richard. This is from Joe Hills. So they missed what you said earlier, whether there are any of the notes were automatically generated or added by person viewing the photos and videos later after capture from site.
So I missed, again, apologies here.
Yeah, the question is regarding making annotations on the photos and videos that you demonstrated in a demo earlier. Are these automatically generated or added by a person view?
Okay. In this particular case today, we added those ourselves individually. Again, technology is moving on all the time. There are some technologies available whereby those annotations can be identified, or the defects can be identified using AI. With that, it must be said that AI needs to be trained. So the more information that you give to it, the more useful the output. For example, if you think about, I don't know, Yorkshire Housing have 18,000 properties with a multitude of different roofs, which themselves will have an even greater multitude of different housing tiles. That AI not only needs to be able to determine that they are housing tiles, but that they are different types of housing tiles, and that a crack in the tile is not I don't know, the shape of the tile itself. So there is AI technology available, and it's very, very good, but it takes time to train it.
Okay, thank you. There's two more that I would like to go through, and apologies if I don't go through all the questions you submitted. We do have a fireside chat and a Q&A later, which I think some of these questions would be great for. So the next question directed to you, Richard, again is, would this be feasible for an individual to check the condition of residential property, or is this for large developments?
No, that's a good question. And again, it depends on how much time you have. Okay, so there are rules and regulations about flying drones. And dependent upon the size of the drone will determine whether or not, or what type of qualification you are required to hold. Drones are not toys, and I wouldn't recommend that anybody go out, buy a drone under a certain weight limit and fly it for inspection purposes, because you can do that. But pilots, and I know there's a lot of people from the drone fraternity in the audience today, and I'm sure they're all of the same mindset. In order to be able to be flying these types of aircraft safely, effectively, you need to have gone through and undertaken a significant number of hours with the aircraft, past qualifications. The chances are that you've had training by a specialist, and so on and so forth. So yes, you could go get a drone, and yes, you could do it yourself, but I would advise greatly against that. I would defer to the professionals to do that for you.
Thanks, Richard. And well, I do have two questions that I want to save for later in the next Q&A, because I think these are very big topics. One is regarding the GDPR for privacy issues when capturing data from drones, and the other is around the future uses of drones and where drones have identified problems and repairs, can it resolve it by itself? So I think these are great conversations to have to save for later, and apologies we don't answer in that, but Richard, if you could just perhaps quickly give a quick comment on procedures, Vantage UAV's procedures with regards to the handling data.
Again, this is quite a large, complex conversation. Okay, so in brief, all data captured is in an encrypted format. So the transfer of data and the storage of data and the assimilation of data has to be undertaken in a certain way. For example, again, you mentioned GDPR there. All data, once it is captured, needs to be screened. So for instance, if you have somebody on a high-rise building standing on their balcony, when the drone goes up and they're smoking a cigarette or having a cup of tea, that needs to be cleaned, and so that cannot be posted on a portal. The data storage needs to be in a secure environment, and it can only be held for a certain period of time. And again, the data itself belongs to the client. It doesn't belong to the drone capturing organization. So once that data is transferred to the client, and again, that is in encrypted format, and they then are required to have the necessary storage capabilities, unless it's on a portal, and any, if you like, duplicate sets of data that are held by the drone company or whoever's captured that data then need to be destroyed. So there are significant workarounds in terms of what needs to be done to meet data security. In the fireside chat, one of my colleagues, Tom, may well join us, who's our operations director, and on points of this matter, he can probably give you more detail than I can.
Yeah, I mean, just to summarize while we're in the conversation, this is Tom from Vantage. We follow the ICO guidelines rigorously, and that talks about, everything Richard has just mentioned now, data protection, but also anonymizing data from persons who are not within our mission brief or our control when we are executing this kind of mission. So it's all about sensitivity of IDing people, keeping that data private, and also removing that data where required. So the ICO has very strict guidelines on this, and we follow that to the letter when we're handling and processing this kind of data.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom and Richard. Yeah, I think it's a very big topic, and certainly one for later, and especially what's the best practice for the sector as a whole in terms of abiding to GDPR. And I remember you mentioned the portal that you showed earlier, and it does have a tiered system, so different access can be given to different operators. Okay, so that's all we've got time for this quick Q&A. It turned out to be a bit longer than expected, but the next, I'd just like to welcome Graham for our next presentation. And just a quick reminder for everyone, and thank you for those who've already submitted the questions already. You can just continue to submit your questions throughout the talk, where we'll have another Q&A at the end of the webinar. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Harry. Yes, good morning, everybody. Graham Brown. I am from ARPAS, which is the Trade Association for Drone Use in the UK. We're a not-for-profit organisation with relationships with with government. That's largely the Department for Transport and Bays, but also the CAA and the police. And we have links with industry to promote the use of drones and the relevant education for end user organizations. I'm just going to quickly go through some of the use of drones in housing, and I will make it quick because we are a little bit behind, and then finish really looking at some of the cost savings. That'll be examples of cost savings, which, you know, you will have to apply your own particular workings to, but I can, you know, just show you some real savings that that people have made. Now, when we look at drones, I mean, there's a lot of activity on the left there. The general uses, search and rescue and emergency services get some press, deliveries, the NHS trials, post office deliveries, security, humanitarian and disaster management. But if we then switch to the right and look at building related, we've got the roof surveys and building surveys that Richard has been talking about. Thermal scans we sort of touched on briefly, but that's, you know, looking at driving energy efficiency and the drive to net zero. Vegetation management may be important, parking planning, environmental monitoring and control, and last but not least, promotional videos for all sorts of purposes. And 2 seconds, there's not just one type of drone, there are different drones for different jobs. So it's not just the case of go and buy a drone and then I can do everything. There's a lot of different types, and a lot more than that, there's a lot of different accessories that you attach to drones, from everything from cameras to LiDAR to multispectral to thermal cameras, that make it a lot more complex than just buying a simple drone. And as Richard alluded to at the back end of when he was talking, the legal framework and regulations, you know, it is a complex area, and you need to make sure that you're compliant with all sorts of regulations and the legal framework, which actually some changes to that came into force today, giving the police new powers. So why would anybody be interested? I mean, I think, you know, one clear thing is that cost of repairs and maintenance is going up, and it went up 8%. 3.51 billion is a big number in anybody's money. But how can we? So the next piece is, how can we help reduce those? How can we help the drive to net zero and energy efficiency? How can we improve safety, particularly in reducing falls from height? And how can we collect more data, accurate data, and improve the digital view we have of our assets, create digital twins, 3D models, and input to BIM as examples. So looking at drones in housing, we've talked about low, medium, and high rise. I think you know, one of the things there, and I've just mentioned the different sensors, including thermal and LiDAR, that all help with accuracy. There's lots and lots of information on that particular issue. The rough rule of thumb is that the higher the building, the more, the bigger the saving, clearly, because you're going to be doing less scaffolding on low-rise buildings than you are on high-rise. Development and land inspections, you know, that's an area where actually helping the planners and developers and looking at volumetric calculations and what have you is another sort of whole subject area. Building thermal inspections, getting the thermal cameras, as you heard, you know, you have to do that with a particular way. It's not just about having a thermal camera and flying it over buildings. You know, there's a particular expertise needed in order to do that properly. And the last bullet there about solar panels is that, you know, drones flying over a set of solar panels is very good at identifying which ones are operating properly and which ones aren't. Estate management, tenancy issues, graffiti, abandoned vehicles. There's all sorts of subjects in there. And particularly, you know, one that I know some people have used is the helping to manage the state of vegetation, identifying growth and planning maintenance to control the vegetation around buildings in estates. And the last one there is about promotional videos. That could be to market void properties, or just really to promote yourself and promote your buildings on your website. So those are a few sort of, it's a very quick summary of what you might want to use drones for. So, you know, the challenges, and we've covered some of these, you know, a high proportion of properties with difficult to access areas, reducing disturbance to tenants and customers and staff, and to the public that scaffolding can cause. Building your digital data for 3D models, digital twins and BIM. Reducing the costs, and we've talked about buildings, but you could also be inspecting pavements, parking slots, the landscape, the guttering, storm damage after particular weather conditions. And you know, one thing that we'll keep coming back to is that the use of drones does reduce resident disruption. You've seen examples of the automatic roof measurement, and you know, I think the other piece is that, you know, the data collection is easily repeatable, and that may be because if you look lower down, the before and after data on remedial work, you can actually now fairly easily check that work you thought was being done has been done through the repeat inspections. The second bullet there is about the real-time access. I mean, to me, that's a very exciting opportunity where the drone can be capturing the images and the experts can view it from wherever they are working, either in the office or at home, given the sort of the current circumstances. And it also would now enable discussion and collaboration between different teams. And the last bullet Richard mentioned, which is, you know, feeding it into all sorts of different applications and tools, means that you're building up a data bank and a set of information on your assets that you perhaps didn't have before. Reducing the working at height. I mean, that is sort of commonly acknowledged as the only real way to reduce falls from height is don't go up there. And, you know, clearly that has the safety aspect, which is very, very important. But also, if you don't have to build scaffold or hire mutes or what have you, then that is a cost saving. The bullet down here, which is the repairs, difficult to access repairs, I think was highlighted in the in one of the buildings at Yorkshire, which is, you know, an estimated said that the roof needed replacing, and closer examination proved that that wasn't necessary, with a fairly substantial saving there. And you heard, you know, the positive feedback from staff, the surveyors, and what have you. So I think this was really just a quick summary to say that the building inspections and condition assessments are vital, but there are more uses. So, you know, just a few sort of quick pictures of, you know, and I think, you know, Richard's sort of done these, so in the interest of time, I'll flick through them fairly quickly, but you can see all sorts of different things are picked up. So I'm now going to go through just some cost savings that you know, actual have been made. The data's been provided by housing associations, working with RPAS members and partners and suppliers. And whilst you may use different models, I mean, I think just take the sentiment that, you know, there are some significant savings. The first one talks about a saving of 275,000 across 11 sites. The next one talks about the scaffolding cost could have reached 300,000. The rule of thumb that Richard talked about says that, you know, you may save around 80% per building, and that could be potentially higher as the buildings get higher. This one, the condensed space of time, basically they save 7,900 per building. And the bottom one is a job was able to be done in a very quick time, in less than 30 minutes, to see some of the results. We haven't sort of, you know, we talked briefly about 3D scanning, but, you know, that can be done a lot faster. And inspecting a roof now, I've got to put a warning label on that one. That comes from a supplier. But, you know, a factor of 10, if it's only 7, it's still a lot faster. The accuracy is something that you'll see on one of my next slides, is something that that you need to make sure that you get demonstration from suppliers of, if they're claiming an accuracy, you know, ask for evidence. And, you know, the bottom point, it now takes us 5 minutes instead of 60 for a roof survey. Now, that's a little bit of an exaggeration from the point of view that you do need to process the data, but collecting the data is a lot quicker. And the last one I just wanted to go through was, you know, because the number's so big, you can see here in the yellow on the right, 4 million. This is from Renfrewshire Council. You know, I know that they perhaps don't account for some things, or you may argue about the cost of scaffolding per day, etc. But the savings across 12,000 properties is really quite big, and they are, you know, they are prepared to talk to people about how they work that out. And the last point that I sort of want to make in this section is really that we talked about automatic measurements and the use of AI. AI will come up. I mean, it will be used to analyze the pictures, to automatically highlight things. You can see here that we're talking about that it would automatically identify and measure different roof and edge types and surface areas and valleys, etc. So this area will only progress you know, as time goes by, and I think it's a very exciting area. So we come now to, so how do you do this? And you know, one of the things is, do you sort of do stuff in-house, or do you use external services? And certainly I think most conventional wisdom would say, you know, you're probably going to end up with a hybrid of some of this, doing some of it yourselves and using some of the specialist areas. You may want to use external services, but certainly to get started, you should probably to look at, you know, trying some things in a controlled way. And that will be the subject of the next talk from Jenny. But just going from the top, you know, anybody who you use needs a flyer ID and an operator ID. They need the appropriate CAA authorizations. They need to have the appropriate training and a proper level of commercial insurance and public liability insurance. And there are old definitions and standards for all of that piece. You see here, you know, I talk about making sure that you get proof of any accuracy claims and evidence of each type of work. And down the bottom here, you know, you use a contract that's relevant with appropriate wording. And you know, if you need help with that, we do have experience in those areas. It's not just a standard service you're buying. You're buying collection of data, which you may not have done before. And then last but not least, down the bottom there, I'm talking about best practice guides in specific areas. So, you know, that is something that we are working on, one on thermal, for instance. We do run some CPDs. They will be starting next month on explaining drones and how they work. So, you know, if you have any questions, please just let us know, let me know, and, you know, we can see how we can help. And last but not least, I'd just like to put a very quick thanks to the people whose data we've used in part of the presentation, because we wouldn't have all of that data without them. So that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Graham. I think there's a lot of hard work people don't realize in collating all of that evidence to something to reflect on. There's huge amount of savings potential with the use of drones, and especially collecting data. I think it's definitely the first steps, that vast amount of data, and Graham touched on the use of AI and how that data then could support BIN model. So I think there's going to be some great themes that's going to come out and discussion for the fireside chats. But I'll hand over to Jenny now, who's the Associate Director for PropTech Innovators Network. So over to you, Jenny.
Thanks, Howie. It's always a bit of a mouthful, that, isn't it? We'll just call it PIN, I think, makes it easier. So just before we start this section of, which hopefully you'll find interesting, of actually how do you get to integrate drones into housing? What's the way to do that? We've got some just some final questions to go through. So hopefully they should appear on the screen like they did before with Hannah. There's just 3 questions on there. So if you don't mind filling those in, just give you a couple of minutes to do that. Okay, and then we should see before long the poll back on the screen. Leanne, have we got the poll ready now?
We're just waiting for a couple of more. I can see this. Oh, there we go.
Okay, so that's interesting, isn't it, on question 1? So the transformative benefits to the sector and large benefits. So even on those 2 alone, that's a significant proportion. The following user cases, clearly a lot for the building surveys and BIM modelling with thermal inspections and estate management missing out. And the biggest barrier. So that regulation, privacy and security concerns is certainly coming at the top with senior buy-in too. So I think there's some of the questions that reflected that as well, and hopefully what we're going to go through now will also help you in answering some of those questions. We're just going to spend a few minutes now to explain where the PropTech Innovators Network fits in. A number of you are already on the call, are already members of PIN and members of Disruptive Innovators Network. Moving across, that PIN is the social housing's only dedicated network focusing on PropTech, really to support the implementation of technology to support the design, build, maintenance, manufacture and maintain of properties. One of the many benefits that we have of PIN is our DIN labs. So as this slide suggests, the sector traditionally across councils and housing associations and ALMOs, we like to pilot new things, but often that learning isn't shared, and pilots are repeated over and over again across different elements of the sector, which puts a lot of the companies off doing pilots because it's a big investment, and they don't necessarily get the returns back as quickly because it takes us usually a long time to move from pilot to rollout due to the procurement hurdles that we need to go through. So the idea of the DIN Lab is a platform with defined outcomes. So we know what's been tested, what's been piloted, should I say, and what some of the experimental things we want to try with that. You get access to PropTech leaders who will invest their time in this. And when we look at this particular DIN Lab, we're going to be working with RPAS, with suppliers, with CPC, and procurement experts to support you in this journey. So it's a chance really for test before you invest. There's a huge amount that you gain, and for those that are already on existing DIN Labs, of the collaboration and sharing from others. And it's a speedy way of doing it. It's 12 weeks investment with a huge amount of content. And we then feed back the outputs of this back to the wider sector. Now, this is particularly interesting because on this DIN Lab that we're looking at, is going to go into slightly more detail. So drones are still, I know a number of people are using them, but they're still very new to the sector. And a lot of organisations that are using them are using them for inspection of buildings, where we think they could be used far wider than that. So as part of this DIN Lab, we want to help in how we can procure them. So you get experience in understanding what you need to ask for and how that could work, and the different frameworks that could be used to support that. We're looking at helping you to become an educated client, so you understand some of the legislation and the regulation around it. So not to become an expert, but to understand enough of how to procure that, and really get you supported for things to fit into your processes. So actually it's an end-to-end solution, looking at business cases, looking at what your investment criteria is, looking at stakeholders, mitigating risks. There's a whole element within there. So the process, as I said, is a 12-week process. We're going to be kicking this off in the autumn. We're going to be sending stuff out around this over the summer to get your interest in this, as I said, to kick off in the autumn. From the commitment perspective, we're looking to get your executive lead as part of this, as well as an operational lead. There will be an investment fee, which will be paid to get the modelling out of there. We're looking to for each of the providers to have an experience of some of your buildings, to look at perhaps thermal imaging, to perhaps look at 3D and 2D, similar to what Vantage have already gone through. So you've got experience of that to show the rest of your team. I'll be network director for this from a DIN Lab perspective, but a number of the colleagues on the webinar today will also be involved in that. So is the DIN Lab right for you? Well, we believe there's a huge potential. I think, as you've already highlighted in the questions just now, I think everyone believes there's huge potential. I think understanding what we can do with that rich data, and Brian had already mentioned in one of the questions around how that feels back to the asset management system. So we want to ensure that the rich data is captured, and the fact that you and other people within the organisation can use this to really help on those decision makings, and to support you in that developing a drone strategy and the business case to sell this in the organisation and to bring back a lot of the savings that have already been articulated. And I know I keep talking about that, but the learning and sharing with like-minded providers is key in this. So it usually ends up, even though you may only be looking at 2 or 3 buildings, actually because you're involved with others within this, that actually extends out and you get a far greater learn from it. So what will you get? Well, as well as we talked about being more of an educated client, which I think is really helpful. As part of the DIN Lab, you'll become the sector thought leaders in this. So looking at those drone user cases, what else can we do apart from the buildings? Where else can we look to exploit this technology? How they can add value? How can that fit into the existing workflows? We've talked about the drone strategy, the business case, and a mitigation plan. So it went really well in York with residents, but I think speaking to others, there's been times where residents are concerned around the use of drones. So what again can we share to help put those mitigations in place? And really, as the last one, the participation in sector procurement solutions. So we're really looking to have something that's easy for you to to use to access this drone technology. So we'll be sending out more details nearer the time. A number of you I work with already, but that's the information if you want anything directly after this, and we'll be in contact with people, people following this. So if we move on now to look at the fireside chat. So hopefully we can, we've got a few questions to kick off with, and this should then lead into the Q&A that Howie will chair for us shortly. So if Graham, Chris and Richard also want to join me, that would be great.
Super. And Tom may join us as well, if there's anything particularly technical.
Even better, Tom. Martha, it's lovely looking at your picture of drone. It'd be nice to see you as well. That'd be great.
No, that is Tom.
That is
yeah. I don't have a date of birth. I've got a serial number. Sorry about that.
So just to be able to kick off, Graham, a few number of housing organisations have invested in drone technology. There was a big spike in interest over the last 5 years, but I think it's fair to say that a number of people got burnt through that, for reasons such as a single person dependency where it's invested in-house, inexperience, perhaps the cost and the legislation. What do you think's changed since?
I think the changes have been quite a lot, actually. I think people are starting to understand drones, whereas you know, using somebody in-house who happened to be a fan, whilst sort of admirable, didn't generate the results, because let's be honest, you know, the flying piece is somewhere between 5 and 20% of the activity, and what you don't see, you know, the other piece of the iceberg is all the processing, the knowledge, the experience, understanding what you're doing, and putting the right software solutions together. Plus, drones have dramatically improved over the past 5 years. They are, you know, their capabilities and the accuracy is a lot better, and so have the accessories that they can carry, and you know, the applications have developed. So hopefully those things are behind us, but I think there is potentially a new challenge, which is because of some of the relaxation of some of the regulation. People can go and buy a cheap small drone, as Richard alluded to, fly it and say that they're going to collect some data for people. It will not be the same job as the data you saw Richard collect, and therefore people need to go in with their eyes open and seek professional advice as they would with any other activity, I think.
Great, thank you. So building on from that then, Richard and Tom with his serial number, what archetype and building height do drones work best on? Is it bungalows, houses, low rise, high rise, or is it all of those? And are there differences on cost savings depending on the different types of buildings used?
Okay, that's a really good question. I think the short answer is all of them. I think if you look at particular asset type, so if you were look at a high-rise building as an individual entity, then obviously the savings in time and cost and so on and so forth compared to an individual house will be significantly greater. However, if you have a block of houses, or as you saw in the project itself, you know, a series of properties within a development there, that they can all be done in the same day or half a day. So the volume of the smaller properties can be done a lot more readily and rapidly than a larger property, but the savings and the application of the drones applies across all of them. Definitely. I wouldn't prioritize.
Okay, thank you. And then one of the things that always used to annoy me when I was looking after assets is when we ended up with buildings being butted up to railway lines or in really hard to access places. So can drones assist in reaching those, especially where cherry pickers can't reach or it's difficult to scaffold?
Okay, so I'm going to hand this one to Tom, as our head of ops. He can go through that one if you're okay with that, Tom.
Yeah, for sure. So yes, absolutely is the question, is the answer to the question. However, there are certain things that we have to consider when operating in such environments. So this comes down to predominantly aviation safety, risk management, and risk mitigation. So, for example, a railway line where we may have a high-rise abutting to that, or it could be a major carriageway, it could be railway, it could be anything else like that. There are some primary considerations. Now, if the railway track is live, then we have to seek the correct permissions. In this example, it would be probably somebody like Network Rail and also the landowners. And then we have to be able to mitigate as much as possible any risk over and above that area. So yes, it can be done, and we have worked in some very challenging environments. We work under what's called the operational safety case, which gives us reduced distances to such structures and buildings, and to be able to operate in fairly challenging areas. But also in the pre-site survey, we look at the risk, we analyze that risk, and sometimes you have to gain special permissions, and that can extend the lead time to be able to execute that mission. But sometimes there is a limitation, and you have to say, well, on one occasion, or we just can't fly there because it's not suitable. We have to look at an alternative method because the risk is too high. But we always look at it on a case-by-case scenario situation, and where possible and safe and legal to do so, we can do that. But often you have to do a fair bit of groundwork to be able to make that happen. But sometimes you have to be prepared to walk away and say, well, look, it is just not possible within the risk factors to be able to do that job safely, with an unmanned aircraft, should something happen.
So it sounds like, Tom, as well, that's all part of the careful procurement that the client needs to take. So you take ownership for that element of it. So it's sort of, from as far as the client's concerned, it's sitting with one party.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if we are responsible for executing that mission and that flight, we're also responsible as a company to make sure that's safe, legal to do so, and the relevant permissions are in place, whether our client assists us with getting those permissions and putting us in touch with the right stakeholders, or whether we have to do that under our own steam. But absolutely, yes. I mean, we take care of the whole process. So, from an end client's point of view, their primary interest is for us to collect that data. We have to make sure, number one, we collect it legally, safely, and with minimal risk. And that's what we do as part of the standard process. And we feed that back to the client on a case-by-case basis when we're instructed to look at a particular inspection or mission to fly. So yeah, that's the kind of routine that we go through. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Tom. Graham, a question to you then. We've talked before, and I'm passionate that we look at drones just not from a building perspective. How can drones support estate management for housing organisations? So things like estate inspections or solar panel surveys, looking at the canopies of trees, drainage surveys, roads, pavements, the list is endless really. What about it, where could they use, and also what would you think the future would be of drones within some of those areas? What else are you seeing elsewhere?
I think firstly the answer is yes, drones could be used to collect data on any of the above. There's a level of sophistication, for instance, in vegetation control, where you may just take a series of time-sliced photographs and just watch how fast that bush is moving and decide, when you've got to cut it. But there's also work being done that identifies different species from the photographs and understands the growth rates of those species and feeds that into a sort of an AI system, which will try to calculate that for you. Now, to start with, I would argue, keep it simple until you understand the benefits you're going to get from actually deploying drones. And one of the other things that we would sometimes say is, don't go overboard, because there are some things where potentially, a camera on a pole may be just as effective without some of the regulation and some of the other aspects. But in terms of all of the above and looking at pavements and looking at planning parking, and you do get a better view in order to support the activity. And solar panels are one where there is already a lot of evidence about drones being used to overfly a whole sort of solar farms and what have you, or panels on a roof, and detect whether they're working. And that's largely thermal. So, you know, we're back to that, you know, be careful about time of day and what have you when it has to be done. In terms of the future developments, I think AI, the automatic classification and analysis of faults will come. There are systems that are there, but I think they will, you know, they will develop more and more in the future. And there are uses of drones that we haven't even thought of yet. So they've, you know, they've been experimenting with 3D printing. I mean, I know Leeds has done some experimentation where the drone drops down and can do a small repair by doing some 3D printing. They're already using them to sort of do small repairs in pipes and what have you on things like the long pipelines, where they can get there, identify a fault, and try to do a temporary fix until a full crew can get there. Michigan University experimented with a drone that effectively nailed a replacement patch onto a roof that had a, you know, that had been damaged and needed a patch doing. So the whole sort of issue, anything you could do with a robotic arm that you can then find a drone that can lift that activity could be done. And clearly spraying is, you know, one such feature as well, where you can do a very controlled low level spray and cover, you know, far bigger distances. So the future is very exciting, but I really would urge people to look at the, you know, the slightly boring practical stuff we can do today, because there are great financial benefits there.
Great, thank you. And my last question to Chris. What about things like checking street lights at night time? Is that an option for use of drones?
Yeah, absolutely, Jenny. I'll just give a quick answer to this one, because actually we've got lots of really interesting questions coming in that we want to move on to, I think. So there's a really good example with a local authority, and they had an opportunity to get some central government grant to replace traditional incandescent lights with LED lighting. And one of the conditions of that grant was actually to demonstrate a reduction in light pollution. So they looked at various options for doing this. And came to the conclusion that the most effective way of doing it was actually to do an overflight before the lights were replaced. So effectively to look at the traditional lighting, collect the data imagery, and then overfly again once the lighting had been replaced with LED lights. And then they could use that to demonstrate the reduction in light pollution. And on the back of that, this local authority actually went on to develop a business case to develop an in-house drone service, and they used that as the first use case, effectively, to deliver those benefits to the local authority. You know, and were successful then in demonstrating the reduction in pollution and getting the grant award. So yeah, absolutely. You know, drones can be used to monitor streetlights at night.
Great, thank you. Howie, shall I pass over to you then?
Thank you all. I thought that was very engaging. Different formats, presentation, the fireside chats do draw out a lot of the key concerns that the industry might have in terms of drone adoption. So I will now move on to the Q&A sessions, our final Q&A, and we've received quite a few very interesting questions. So if I could just ask all the speakers today to just switch on their camera to join the panel, if that's possible. Really thanks to my colleague David, who's been receiving your questions in the background and sorting these out. And then what we'll do now is start directing these questions to our panelists. And I will start off with a question to Richard. This one is from Ravi. And it was about how could drones give out information such as this needs fixing? How does this go in terms of liability? If the drone says it is not an issue, are Vantage UAV surveyors liable for this, or do they employ surveyors to review their images, or is it done in-house
That's a really good question. That is a really good question. I've got to think very carefully how I answer that one. I suppose the cop-out on that is that at this moment in time, I wouldn't have a drone that told me that I had to do something for the exact reason of liability. You know, from a drone perspective, we are data capturers. Okay, we are not surveyors, and most drone pilots are of the same ilk. So we provide the data, which then the experts will look at and determine the necessary actions to be taken from that. But that is a bit of a cop-out. I think moving forward, when you have the technology, the AI that is robust and tested and so on and so forth, that Graham was making reference to in his last piece, then those are the sorts of legislative questions that will be asked before you actually adopt that sort of technology. So I don't know, Graham, do you want to add anything to that one? But it's a really good question, and it's one to think about, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of sort of issues. I know increasingly the way that people are looking at this is they're actually looking at using surveyors and teaching them what drones can do, rather than trying to teach drone operators how to survey. So that's sort of one comment. The data capture and the accuracy of the data and how it's used will be self-evident. And, you know, there are horror stories of people delivering data where, when you do the sort of 3D models that Richard was showing earlier, that there are, you know, some of the walls are transparent, you can see straight through them, you know, clearly not a great job. I think on the whole sort of question of liability, if things are using AI, that's going to come to a head far more quickly in terms of autonomy, autonomous flight, and that sort of activity than it will where we're just providing data into another solution, because you're checking the accuracy of the data before you hand it over.
If I can just add to that as well, even though Richard and his team have annotated the images for us, all of that data will still be reviewed by our in-house surveyors. Yeah, so that's how we'll deal with that.
Yeah, and just to kind of mirror that on previous projects, you know, we do collaborate with qualified surveyors, and they will look at the data. So, you know, as Richard kind of mentioned, we do not purport to be qualified surveyors, even though we do have members of the team and we do have access to such services under a separate, you know, separate guise. But also a lot of our clients will have their own surveyors who will look at the data and maybe be guided by some of the initial annotations that we find. So we're there to support them, you know, when looking at the data and so forth. Hopefully that will kind of, you know, clear up a couple of loose ends there as well.
Okay.
Thanks, Tom. Just conscious of the time, if we could, for the next few questions, if we could keep the answers to a minute or two, that would be fantastic. So it allows everyone to go off for lunch after the webinar in time. But I'm just conscious no one, Chris hasn't done any introductions, and I will start. If you could do a quick intro and answer this question that I'm about to direct to you. So we had questions coming in from here. So where do we go from here? These are still labor-intensive drone flights. Do you see automated solutions as the way forward to realize scale? For example, drone in a box and BB loss.
Yeah, thanks, Howie. Yeah, so I'm Chris G. So I'm a principal engineer in the Air Mobility Directorate and technical lead across the Catalyst program. I mean, that's a really interesting question. I think I'd first answer it by saying, you know, let's not lose sight of what we can actually do today within the current regulations. the piece of work that we've just done has demonstrated the opportunity and savings that can be delivered by using, visual line of sight, so keeping the drone within visual line of sight of the pilot. And there are many, many use cases that, that's still really appropriate for and can deliver considerable savings. So before we start moving on and looking at beyond visual line of sight, so where the drone can fly beyond the pilot, I think we've got a huge opportunity to capitalize on the benefits that can be delivered by drone technology today within the current regulations. Moving on from that, one of the things that we are exploring as part of the Catalyst program is actually looking at how we can use drone in a box technology. Drone in a box is effectively a more automated way of using drones. So if you want to do a repetitive process, so a regular inspection of a particular asset, you can use a drone in a box for that, and that doesn't need a remote pilot or a pilot actually within sort of visual line of sight of the drone. So we are exploring that as an opportunity within the Catalyst and working closely with the CAA to see how we can roll that out, because there are a number of opportunities where that would be really beneficial. Similarly, with beyond visual line of sight, we're also working closely with a couple of projects where they've got CAA approval to do beyond visual line of sight inspections for assets. So that will definitely be coming down the path in the future. But I just reiterate, don't underestimate what you can do with drones today.
Thanks, Chris. Just on that topic then about the future of drone use, this might be the question that I think I want to direct perhaps to you or Graham. And this one is about drones allows us to identify the problems and repair, to identify the problems, but could the drones be used to repair or resolve the problems itself, in, for example, repairing potholes and wind turbines? So I think this is a topic relating to products that we've seen are starting to come to the market, drones with robotic arms. I don't know if any of you wanted to take that.
Yeah, I mean, Graham's already touched on that in one of his earlier answers, and I think that's definitely something we're going to see. And I think Graham's coined the phrase, drones that do, and I think there are lots of opportunities in terms of combining, I guess, what we'd call robotics with drone technology. So to be able to do repairs, to be able to clean things, spray things. Talking to an organisation at the moment that is looking at being able to use drone technology to effectively clean things like wind turbines. So they've got some technology where effectively you can clean the turbine blades and also then spray them with a protective coating to stop them from getting as dirty in the future. So there's all sorts of opportunities out there where we're going to combine robotics and drone technology so that we can actually start to fix and do things rather than just capture data.
Thanks, Chris. I just have time for one more, perhaps a general point I wanted to raise, which is earlier in the poll, one of the biggest barriers to drone adoptions for the housing providers is regulations, privacy and security concerns. And I guess this question I wanted to open to anyone on the panel is what could we do for those who are in this on this webinar? What are some suggestions that we have perhaps to break that barrier down for the sectors? What would be the next steps?
Okay, it might be from a privacy perspective. Again, Tom, if you wouldn't mind giving an insight into what sort of precautions we take and so on and so forth.
Sure. So, as I mentioned earlier, we abide by essentially what's called the CCTV Code of Practice, which is published by the ICO or the Information Commissioner's Office. This is essentially part of our contract with the CAA when they release our operations manual and give us our authorizations for doing these, this kind of work. But essentially, some of the key things to look at is, you know, how we are capturing data responsibly, and how, you know, what we are using to do that, whether that be, you know, visual cameras or thermal cameras. And some of the key points, and, you know, this is quite a big topic for conversation, and I'm more than happy to, you know, discuss this offline and outside of the webinar for, you know, for those who want to know more. But essentially, we have to let people know that may be affected by our operation, what we're doing, and when we're about to start recording, so they can make a choice whether they are in that area of operation. We normally always cordon off and keep the operating area safe, but a major consideration is to check our surroundings, to see what's around us, see who may be affected from a distance. We have to get to know our equipment very well, to know what it's capable of doing and what sort of images. We also have to plan our flights to minimize any disruption or inadvertent capture. And also, you know, we have to keep that aircraft in view at all times, and also to be seen. So when we're operating, we'll always be wearing, you know, high vis. We'll be very prominent on site. We have ground crews that will help marshal people to safety, and also, you know, let people know what's going on. Quite a lot of the time, we will get social interaction with people who are just a little bit curious as to what's going on if they haven't been informed already, or they're coming through, or bystanders. And we have to keep those people, number one, safe, but keep them out of the field of view of the camera and the flight that we're conducting. We also have to think very carefully before we start sharing data. So, you know, when that's being made public through an organization or through a client, we have to make sure that we keep those identifiable images either removed from the data or anonymized, very much like Street View does in Google, where they'll blank out a number plate, or they'll blank out you know, a person's face, so they can't be recognized. And then, of course, is keeping those images safe and making sure that it's stored securely, encrypted when it's being transported, and it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. So they're just some of the key considerations, as well as the other legalities that we follow according to the CA, you know, rules and regs, to be able to operate this way. So again, quite a big subject. I hope that kind of puts it all into a nutshell, but more than happy to take this offline if somebody wants to explore a little bit further on that one.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks,
Tom. And I guess my final remark is on that point is we, as Jenny mentions, there will be a joint CPC DIN lab coming up, and that's one of the key topics that will be explored through the 12-week program. So thank you very much. This is we're pretty much come to the end of the webinar, and we've had a lot of great questions coming in today. I think it's a good point to wrap up now, and I'd like to give my thanks to all the speakers today, as well as our panelists. It's been really interesting. Thank you to all the attendees and for your participations in the Q&A. As mentioned before, the webinar is recorded, so if you like to watch this again, if you have missed anything out, please visit the website, our website, the event page, and share this with your colleagues or anyone who would be interested in what has been presented today. And just to mention, in a partnership with the Disruptive Innovators Network and RPAS, Connected Places will provide more information about this upcoming CPC and DIN lab. And Connected Places Catapult will also be producing the housing sector case studies, including the results from the drone surveys trial that was mentioned today with Yorkshire Housing. So that do look out for this in the next few weeks. And if you're interested in learning about how your organizations could get involved through our program or anything that's been presented today, please do get in touch with the speakers directly or via the drones emailed on the screen right now. And once again, thank you everyone for joining the webinar today, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Thanks all.
Thank
Bye
you.
for now. Thank you.